In 1515, a woman named Margrete Schmidt was dragged into a Nuremberg dungeon, screaming that she would rather burn at the stake than face what awaited her inside, and within 6 hours, she was begging her captives to end her life. But that is not even the worst part. What Margrete faced was a device so psychologically devastating that hardened criminals would confess to crimes they never committed just to avoid it. A machine that broke the strongest minds without spilling a single drop of blood. And here is the twisted part. The Church considered it merciful. By the end of this video, you will understand why historians tried to bury this story and why the psychological techniques used in this medieval nightmare are still being debated by interrogation experts today. But before we dive into this dark chapter of human cruelty, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you will need something to distract your mind after what you are about to learn. I am about to reveal 3 shocking truths. A device so horrific that prisoners chose death over enduring it, a torture method that shattered human minds in just hours, and the disturbing reason why this machine was actually considered an act of mercy. Let us begin with the machine itself. To understand the true horror of what is coming, you need to picture medieval Europe in the 15th and 16th centuries. This was an era where justice was not about rehabilitation, it was about extracting confessions, and the church and state had perfected the art of enhanced interrogation. But here is what most people do not realize. By this time, torturers had discovered something far more effective than breaking bones or burning flesh. They had learned that the human mind was far more fragile than the human body. Physical torture, you see, had limitations. A person could pass out, go into shock, or simply die before giving up their secrets, but psychological torture could go on indefinitely, and the victim would remain conscious and aware throughout every agonizing moment. The authorities needed confessions for witch trials, heresy charges, and political conspiracies, and they needed these confessions to be detailed, specific, and implicating others, while traditional torture methods were producing too many deaths and not enough useful information, so they innovated. What emerged was a device that would redefine human suffering forever. It did not rely on pain. It relied on something far more primitive and terrifying, the human imagination. Today, we are exploring the torture device that made grown men weep before it even touched them, that caused women to confess to witchcraft within hours, and that broke the human spirit so completely that victims would literally beg for death as a mercy. This is the story of the Iron Maiden, but not the version you think you know. What I am about to tell you will change how you understand medieval justice and the psychology behind torture. The machine waiting for Margrete Schmidt in the Nuremberg dungeon was not made for quick death. Imagine standing in a stone chamber with torchlight flickering across damp walls. Before you stands a metal coffin shaped like a human figure, its carved face frozen in eternal agony. When the executioner opens the front panel, you see the interior lined with iron spikes. But the true horror lies in their purpose. These spikes were not intended to kill immediately. Hans Schmidt, the executioner of Nuremberg from 1501 to 1532, recorded the truth in his diary. The spikes were positioned with precision. When the door closed, they pierced the shoulders, chest, and legs, but avoided vital organs. Victims could survive for many hours, sometimes days. Physical agony was not the worst part. It was the waiting. Locked inside, the victim could not move. Every breath pushed the spikes deeper. Every heartbeat sent fresh pain. Total darkness made the terror unbearable. But the psychological twist was even worse. Before closing the door, Hans described exactly what the victim would experience. He explained how the spikes would sink deeper with each breath and how their own body would become the instrument of torture. Most prisoners broke within an hour, not from pain but from anticipation. Margrete Schmidt confessed after 2 hours, naming 17 other alleged witches and begging for execution. Then authorities introduced a modification that turned the Iron Maiden into a mind-breaking device. They added small viewing holes in the face. Victims could now see the chamber outside but were unable to move, scream properly, or beg. Partial sensory perception proved more devastating than total darkness. Prisoners watched others being tortured. They saw tools being prepared. They observed the crowd's expressions while being completely powerless. Records from the Spanish Inquisition describe the effects. Maria Gonzalez, placed in the viewing maiden in 1487, confessed within hours. She provided names by midday and begged for death by evening. Modern psychology explains why. When someone can see but cannot act, the brain enters learned helplessness. This causes a breakdown far faster than physical pain. Victims not only confessed but accused family and friends to end the torment. Yet an even darker version followed. The Iron Maiden of Mercy, approved in 1523, removed the spikes entirely. Prisoners were locked in total darkness with just enough air to survive. Sensory deprivation, uncertainty, and isolation triggered hallucinations within hours. Brother Francesco DeMarco recorded victims hearing voices, seeing visions, and losing sanity as the psychological torture intensified. Prisoners placed inside the Iron Maiden of Mercy often descended into hallucinations within hours. Deprived of light, sound, movement, and any sense of time, they saw figures in the darkness, heard voices, and confessed to crimes born only from their collapsing minds. Lorenzo Medici, suspected of heresy, was locked inside at dawn. By midday he was weeping. By evening he was speaking to his dead mother. By the next morning he confessed to witchcraft despite having no history or evidence of such acts. Prisoners who experienced both torture methods would beg to return to the spiked Iron Maiden. The pain of the spikes, they wrote, had limits. In the darkness, suffering had none. The Church considered this progress. No blood spilled, no bones broken, no visible wounds. They believed they had created a humane method of extracting confessions while completely overlooking the psychological devastation they were causing. But the most disturbing truth came centuries later. Archaeological investigations revealed that many Iron Maidens across Europe showed no physical evidence of use. No blood on spikes, no damage from struggling bodies. Instead, researchers found pulleys, bells, and echo chambers, mechanisms used to create staged sound effects of torture. The real torture was not the device itself but the theater surrounding it. Prisoners were brought before the empty Iron Maiden and heard paid actors describe the agony they had supposedly endured. They listened to manufactured screams and metallic echoes simulating bodies being pierced. They were told they could avoid this fate by confessing immediately. Confession rates soared above 90% without the device ever being used. The Spanish Inquisition mastered this, developing entire theaters of confession designed to psychologically destroy a prisoner before any physical contact occurred. This revelation changed how historians understood medieval justice. The era known for brutal physical torture was actually far more advanced in psychological warfare. These early techniques became the foundation for modern interrogation strategies, psychological pressure, controlled scenarios, and manipulation of fear. Methods refined in medieval Europe influenced interrogations in World War II, the Cold War, and modern counterterrorism units. The consequences were catastrophic. False confessions extracted through illusion helped fuel witch trials across Europe. Innocent people were executed based solely on psychological coercion, their words shaped by fear rather than truth. The Iron Maiden vanished by the late 16th century not because it was cruel but because its false confessions proved useless for real investigations. What endured was the lesson it revealed about human nature. Minds break faster than bodies. Fear can be manufactured. Guilt can be implanted. And truth can be engineered by those who control perception. The Iron Maiden was not merely a torture device. It was a blueprint for psychological manipulation that still echoes through modern justice systems today.